for those of you about to view. The following moments will contain a clown, nature's most evil creature. If you, or any of your loved ones, have a fear of clowns, mimes, or carnival workers, it's best to turn away now. Terrifying. Excuse me. What are you doing in my house? Hey, weirdo. Get out of here. And who are you? Everybody get out of my house. I do not have time for this today. Better. Okay, let me get this out of the way. I don't find clowns scary. I just don't. They didn't bug me as a kid. They don't bug me as an adult. They just don't bug me. But I do get it. A lot of people do have a fear of clowns. Fears and phobias aren't always explainable. And I would never say that one fear is less scary or unsettling than another. I'm just telling you this because I just spent 5 hours and 22 minutes watching both movies of arguably the most scary clown of all time, Pennywise, from Stephen King's It, in preparation for It Chapter 2. And what's my conclusion? Clowns aren't scary. Well, not to me at least. But everything that's under the surface of this story is genuinely terrifying. So let's examine why Pennywise the Dancing Clown has endured since 1986. I'm Ryan Reed, and this is Fright Films. This episode is going to be less of a play-by-play on each movie and more of a refresher on it in all of its many forms. Most people know that in 2017, Pennywise was unleashed onto theatergoers everywhere in the form of this movie, It, directed by Andy Muschietti. The film was a massive hit, bringing in $700.4 million at the box office. But before that, there was a version of it that terrorized audiences by entering their homes. For a 2-night television event. That's right, back in 1990, the miniseries It was released. Directed by Tommy Lee Wallace of Halloween 3 fame, the miniseries was a massive hit for ABC. After premiering, the film was released on Laserdisc and VHS in its original form. Later, however, it was cut into a 187-minute version that has been used on all future releases. But even before that was the biggest version of them all. That's right. The book that started everything. From the mind of Stephen King, we've got It. Released in 1986, this massive text is 1,138 pages long, depending on the printing, all dedicated to a clown. That's right, Stephen King wrote a book that is over 1,000 pages long about a clown terrorizing children. That's a lot of clown to read. And read it I did. But not recently, though. No, I don't have time for that. I read it several years ago. But, since I wanted to compare it to the films, I did refamiliarize myself with all the plot points of the book. And let's stop there, because this whole thing can get very confusing with 3 It's going on. So, whenever I say It the book or It the novel, that's pretty self-explanatory which one I'm talking about. Whenever I say It, the miniseries, or It 1990, I'm talking about this movie. And whenever I say It 2017, that's this one. Again, pretty obvious. Let's continue. The plot for all three versions is roughly the same. A group of misfit kids become friends over the summer and they start calling themselves the Losers Club. In the book, in the 1990 miniseries, this takes place during the 1950s. In the 2017 movie, it takes place in the 80s. The unofficial leader, Bill, lost his brother Georgie after he went missing during a storm. The town presumes that he's dead, but we, the viewer or the reader, know that he's dead because he was killed by a creature referred to as It that takes many, many forms, but most prominently, that of Pennywise, the dancing clown. Throughout the story, the kids learn of its existence, and so they band together to defeat the creature. However, as adults, they later learn that the creature was not actually destroyed, and so they come together one more time to finally defeat it once and for all. Just giving the basic plot points does a disservice to the story, though. See, there's so much that happens in the novel that it would be hard to completely capture it on film, and so far no one has. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. A text so heavy that it could crush somebody if dropped from a high enough distance is probably going to be hard to translate. See, in the novel, there are so many more characters, there are chapters dedicated to historical events, and there are even sections in the book where it narrates its own existence. That's pretty heavy. No pun intended. The goal, then, is to distill it down to its essence, to give viewers the experience of what it feels like to read the story. And that's a tough thing to do. Both the miniseries and the 2017 film go about this in different ways. See, the miniseries tries to give us the best beat-by-beat retelling that's possible. And on this front, it mostly succeeds. Yes, moments are condensed because of runtime. Events are cut out or changed, and some of the elements are greatly sanitized for a 90s TV audience. But overall, It 1990 is fairly close to the book while leaving out some of the more existential elements. Now here's the bad news, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but here it goes. I don't think It 1990 is a very good film. And that's not me saying you shouldn't like it, or that there's anything wrong with you being scared by it. But from a purely technical level, I just can't understand why people were as terrified as they were. I had a cousin who was terrified of Pennywise, and so I didn't see it until much later in life. And maybe that's why it didn't have as big an effect on me. I wasn't a kid when I saw it. I try my best to be positive on this show, so rather than just say the film is bad, let me try and break it down so I can explain my thoughts. The acting isn't always the strongest. It ranges from mediocre to just plain bad sometimes, and there could be a lot of reasons for this, but my guess is 90s TV acting. See, it was just a different style back then, and while now shows are treated as just as important as films, it wasn't always that way. For a long time, TV was viewed as less intellectual, and so because of that, you had a wider range of acting. Not all of it good. But let's forgive that. There are plenty of B movies that I love where the acting is just downright awful, and that's part of their charm. So I can look past that. And on top of that, there are some good performances in Part 2. Part 2 is going to become a theme, by the way. See, Part 2 is significantly better than Part 1, in my opinion. And perhaps it's because it focuses on the characters as adults instead of focusing on them as kids. Not because the kid's storyline is any less interesting. I think the 2017 version of it proved that. Instead, I'm wondering if it's because of time restrictions with actors. When kids act in films, they're only allowed to film for certain times during the day. See, they have to go to school, and they have restrictions on how many hours they can work a week and what times of the day they can actually work. Adults don't have that. Acting is their career. When you watch the kids' scenes, there's not a lot of interest to the shots. They're all flat and they're lacking a lot of depth and dimension. But all of this changes when they become adults. Suddenly the scenes are more lively, the editing's a little different, there's more montages, the shots are better. Also, the acting, well, still not amazing, is much better in Part 2. In Part 2, the adult actors feel like real friends. They feel like they've known each other for a really long time. The kids in Part 1 don't really feel like they're forming a friendship. Instead, they kind of just feel like a group of kids cast to play friends. However, the 2017 version is significantly better in this department. The kids feel like friends. They act way more naturally, and most of all, they behave the way that kids do. The film has an R rating, which allows the kids to behave more realistically by being more crass and swearing, and it also allows the stakes to be a lot higher because you're able to put the kids in darker situations. Take the bully Henry Bowers. In the miniseries, he has a few moments where he feels a little threatening, but overall he comes off more as a background character in Grease than a real bully. However, in the 2017 version, Henry Bowers comes off as a lot more unhinged. Even in the beginning, you can tell this kid is capable of bad things, and that only gets more and more disturbing as the film goes on. A good comparison is when the bullies attack Ben. In the miniseries, Henry only threatens to cut Ben, but it never actually happens. In the 2017 film, he starts carving his name into Ben's stomach. That's a pretty big difference. But here's where things start to get interesting. See, apart from the overall plot and the kids fighting Pennywise, the 2017 film is significantly different from the book. It takes place in a different decade, the kids' fears are different, and character backstories are changed. In fact, if you took Pennywise out and changed character names, you could have a completely different story. But somehow, the 2017 film feels more like the book than the miniseries does. How does that work? Well, the 2017 film understands the themes of the book a lot more than the miniseries does. It's not just about fighting a monster. It's about loss and grief and friendship and growing up and what it means to be an adult, and most of all, fear. While Pennywise can be scary, don't worry, we'll get to him, the 2017 film understands that even on a surface level, the scariest parts of the book are not Pennywise. I rarely have to stop watching a movie or reading a book due to its content. It's happened before, but it happens very infrequently. However, when I was reading it, there were two moments I had to kind of step away from the book for a little bit. I won't spoil too much for people who haven't read the book, but if you know the book fairly well, one scene involves a dog, the other scene involves the backstory of a character named Patrick Hocksetter. What both these sections have in common is that they showcase the evil of people, not monsters. Yes, the argument can be made that things are being made worse because of its influence. However, these sections showcase the darkness that can live inside humanity, and holding a mirror up to that part of our species is far scarier to me than any dancing clown. But let's discuss the clown, shall we? Not you! We've got the Tim Curry Pennywise and the Bill Skarsgård Pennywise. Both performances are wildly different. So, whichever version of Pennywise you prefer is really going to depend on which style you gravitate towards. To me, Tim Curry appears as the more trustworthy Pennywise, which would explain why Georgie would spend so much time talking to a clown in the sewers. However, he's never really frightening. There's a moment where he threatens the kids when he pops out of this photo album, and that's pretty unsettling, but overall, he comes off more as a bad comedian telling corny jokes than anything. Even when he's got sharp, pointy teeth, he's still making terrible puns, and it's just not scary. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is a lot more unhinged. Rather than acting like a clown, his performance is based on the idea that he's acting like a monster who's acting like what a monster thinks a clown should act like. Like, there's a moment where he's talking to Georgie in the sewers, and in the middle of laughing, he just stops and is just staring at him, like something in his brain broke or he's out of batteries or something. It's like an animal staring at his prey. When moments like that happen, it makes him a lot more disturbing and weird. It maybe makes it a bit less believable that Georgie would stop and talk to him for so long, but the movie does make up for this by showcasing that it has different powers. It can affect people's senses. See, Georgie can hear and smell the circus coming from the sewers, which lures him in. Can I just say that in any version of it, Georgie is an idiot. I don't care if it's the 50s, the 80s, or present day. No kid is going to talk to a clown in the sewers. Like, I didn't grow up with one kid that I knew who would be like, hey, there's a creepy clown in the sewer. Guess I'll go talk to him and get my paper boat back. It's paper, Georgie. Go make another one. Bill's not going to be that mad at you, you dope. Well, to wrap everything up, Is there one definitive version of it? Do you have to watch both movies and read the book before you can begin to understand everything that's going on in It Chapter 2? Probably not. I mean, yeah, you're gonna probably want to go see It 2017 at least, since It Chapter 2 is a direct sequel to that movie. But there really isn't a definitive version of It. Go with whichever version you prefer. The book is a lengthy masterpiece, and while some may argue it's a bit bloated, it's totally worth reading if you can. But if you don't like to read, get the Cliff Notes version with the miniseries. I also understand it's a bit of an unfair comparison because the miniseries was the entire book, whereas the new movie is only half the story. They were able to split it into 2 movies to develop everything a bit more. But even with that said, I think the miniseries should be cut down. I'd love to see a 2-hour fan edit of the film that cuts out some of the unnecessary stuff and just makes it a really solid B movie rather than a so-so 3-hour adaptation of a book. As for the new film, it definitely gets the vibes of the book correct, although it changes a lot of the plot points significantly. So, whichever version of it you prefer, just be happy that the story has lasted this long. Your version doesn't disappear when a new one comes out, and honestly, I don't think this will be the last time we see Pennywise. After all, he does reappear every 27 years. I'm Ryan Reed. Go watch a movie. Or in this case, maybe read a book.